And I'm like, he's still up. My God, this thing's got a lot of hit points. He's there forever. I'm like 6 rounds later. But the thing I also do is he will never hit. Once I put him in an artificial hit point area, just to make it more epic feeling, he can't hit him. I'll roll dice, but he will never hit him. Because he should be dead. He will be dead. I just wanted to drag out the epicness of that one little combat so it didn't seem like a walk in a park. And they felt like, oh my God, we almost died. You know, and they're freaking out. It's like, you guys, it was a walkthrough. But it's boring to do walkthroughs. So sometimes they like walking through things, but not every time. You know, especially when a monster looks epic and they're like, oh, 3 20s in a row. I'm like, all right, guys. It happens a lot. Yeah, my system, I've got a lot of homebrew rules. I'm the king of homebrew. I can't leave anything well enough alone. I tweak it until it's just amalgamation of Tim the Tool Man. It's got to have more power. And, you know, my system's very deadly. It's very harsh world with my game. And, you know, crits, you know, they can do up to 5 times damage. You know, your longsword can do up 150 damage in my game. Hit points are fixed. You're all around 60, 70 hit points and forever. And, you know, I'll throw out these ogres. He's 230 hit points coming at you. I got my bow hit for 80, and I got a 20 over here, and I'm like, oh, he's gone. That's all right. Well, that's how things work. But I remind the players, it all comes back around. So. Yeah. It's a harsh world, so I try to be completely fair with them, but I like to make it feel more exciting sometimes, and I'll bend things here and there, but not too much. I like the story to play out how it plays out. And we had one guy where you know, the random encounter was I'll just roll, and I kept rolling like, oh my God, this is harsh. This is a Hydra. They're not ready for this. Well, my world does not know your level. You know, it never has, and you know, things can appear and be, you know, where they're at. The party is in the world. The world's not there for the party, at least in my games. And so this thing coming around to them as they're camping. And one of the party members did a Ludwig's tiny hut that makes a sphere of force, and everybody but 3 characters stayed in it. The other 3 wanted to scout, be their scouty characters and hide and watch this thing. And they're all hidden. You can't see them. Well, it starts to sniff around, and then they realize, oh, you can't smell us? Well, yeah. You know, and so it's walking close to one, and he makes an attack at him. He's like, screw this, I'm out of here. In other words, I'll just run into the hut too. One last guy goes, no, I can hide. I can hide from it. So this Hydra comes up and he gets close and finally lashes at him. And he can't get to there in time with 1 round. This thing's got 5 goes at him. You know, it missed him. He's like, see, I got this. And then hit him and crit him and crit him. It took him to negative his hit points in 1 round. He was negative 7, he was done. And then the other 2 heads just chewed on the bits that were ripped off from the other one. And that's when everyone looked and they said, oh God, this is real. I was lucky this whole time. You had no idea. I told you I would kill you if you let me. I meant it, and here it is. You know, but you know, I didn't have the thing just charge at him. You know, I'd let him have an opportunity. And as a result, 2 of the other players said their characters were so horrified that they left and they made new characters. They said there's a wood elf in the group, and the other 2 wood elves said, we're screwed this, we're gone.
This is not part of my agenda.
My character can't stand that. That was horrifying to him. He wasn't going to adventure anymore. So, but it's, you know, and I'd let the adventure go that way. It's fun. So for me, it is exciting when the game goes where I did not plan. And there's 2 things I want to bring up before I forget. Chekhov's gun. If anyone familiar with Anton Chekhov about writing and screenplays and whatnot, and his rule is if you've got a loaded rifle on the wall as a prop in Act 1, and Act 2 or Act 3 it should be fired, it should be used. Which for them is no unnecessary background. And I'm opposite of that when it comes to gaming. I fill it with red herrings and things that don't matter. Because I want the party to, if they figure things out, they're going to have to really figure it out. The glowing MacGuffin on the wall isn't going to be obvious. So anything that matters is going to have to be derived by input and being in the session and figuring things out. Because half the game is on the piece of paper for the players, their stats. The other half of the game is in the head of the players where they're figuring things out, which is what first edition D&D was all about. It wasn't about, I roll an investigation and I figured it out. No, the DM describes the room and your asses are sitting there until you've figured out how to get out, figure the puzzle for yourself, here's a picture of it, and you've got to figure it out. Now, sometimes it makes sense if you're playing a brilliant character that he should have an edge sometimes. True. But the game also requires some of the people playing to figure things out on their own. So I like to make it a 50-50 blend. Half of the game is on the stats, the other half of the game is in the hands of the people at the table. You know, and work together. If you got some smart puzzle people in the party, use them. You know, otherwise, if it's all stats or all non-stats, if it's in the players, I just think it just doesn't work as well. It's personal preference on my part. And the other thing comes from Schrodinger's cat, if anyone's dealt with concepts of quantum physics, which basically Schrodinger's cat is. He puts a cat in a box. He puts a nuclear isotope in the box. And this radioactive isotope. And it may degrade. And if it degrades, it's going to cause a gun to go off and kill the cat, or some poison is going to poison the cat. Either way, it's a 50-50 if that happens. He has no control if the cat's going to get killed in this box or not. He can't shoot, which is the basic of all quantum physics is, until you know the answer, both states are in effect. The cat is dead and the cat is alive at the same time. Well, that brings me to something called a quantum ogre. It's talked about online, and another DM site, which is the ogre is an adventure, an encounter the DM has painstakingly written up. And he exists wherever the party's going to go. Because he doesn't care. Wherever you go, he happens to have already been there. The quantum ogre can be used once in a while for small things that you really think would be fun if the party finds. But I don't force it upon people. If I made a badass ogre and I put him in the forest and the party decided to go in the caves, I throw the ogre behind me and work on something else. I'm not going to make you fight that ogre. But I will do something else, and I pre-plan encounters. Here's an ogre encounter. Here's a giant cat encounter. Here's a beholder encounter. And they're not, like, I don't want you to fight this, but I'll make a list of them. And then if they ever come up as in encounters, I've got one ready. So instead of me forcing something down the party's throat, I just plan for different types of encounters so that, and they're a little detailed than normal, more than just a name on a chart. I put some like scenarios in place or something, abilities or tricks or personalities in these creatures. And it's all on a piece of paper so I can just grab it and go, okay, and then have a lively encounter without making the party have to encounter it. And I may never use them. So that's my Schrodinger's and Chekhov's.
That's been
Very nice.
Want to talk?
This
This man was playing
He's been quiet.
D&D till
6 in the morning.
I was
6 in the mornings. I'm a little bit on the tired side.
started
So
at midnight last night.
started at 10.
10?
10. Right when everyone cleared out, we started at 10 and we went on until
Ridiculously proud
like
of you.
6 a.m. Got home at 7. 3 hours of sleep and then came back here.
Do you have any tips for new DM
I-
trying to start an adventure?
I think the most on that note, a good segue actually for having played until about 4 a.m.
Don't play till 4.
No. I encourage playing until the wee hours of the night.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I'm playing, that's a problem for future Desmond. Okay, he's gonna be tired at work the next day. But I've been playing with the same group now every Friday for the past 5 years. There have been very few, if any, Fridays we've missed. Sometimes I'll go to Comic-Con, I'll go to WonderCon, there's a wedding, people are moving, little things, life intervenes. But that's mainly because early on, I painstakingly created this party of my friends and colleagues. And I think it's really important that if you want a successful game, you have to really choose your players carefully. I mean, granted, I run the D&D encounters here at the shop. That's meant for brand new players. I'm going to get a plethora of players that I've never met before, who've never played D&D. That's fine. That's what I do. I work with brand new players who have never held the D20 before. But when you're going to be investing all this time and effort into making a game that could last 5, 10 years, you got to kind of pick and choose carefully. And I think the best way I've done so is to simply let the players do that. I picked a handful of colleagues that I went to high school with. Great guys, all of them are theater kids. So I know right off the get-go, these are going to be amazing role players. And they have been. I've always said that theater kids all make some of the best characters and best players overall. And I wanted to have a decently fleshed out party. I've always said that around 5 to 6 people is your most ideal number for a party. Anything less than that, and it can get a little bit too abrasive on you. You're going to have to give each of these players a good deal of love and attention. Anything more than that, then it's going to be way too many players. I mean, I've run games where I've done 12 people once, and that was for like a little event I did at CSUB. probably the worst experience I've ever had as a dungeon master. It was god awful, and I have nightmares about it to this very day. But those 12 players had the time of their lives. I don't know how, but they did. They still tell me now at CSUB when I go there, I had the best time ever. That was a fun D&D game. I'm like, oh, I guess we were playing in 2 completely different games. That was hell for me. But they had fun. So I think definitely when you're looking for new players to jump in, always look to your friends. Always ask around who wants to play D&D. And I think with social media, you get this chance to really socialize and kind of pre-screen your players before they jump into your game. You know, using Facebook, Skype, and whatnot. Whenever I have someone who wants to play in one of my games, you know, I give them a little bit of a pre-screen. I hang out with them sometimes. I bring them into the party. We just chill out, play video games, what have you. Just socialize to see how they work with the party. Because chemistry is key with a party. If you have that one bad egg, it can completely ruin a game. It can just derail it, and you know, I've seen amazing games that have gone on for years on end. But let's say there's a couple in the group. They happen to split up. Unfortunately I've run games like that where, you know, we have like 2 couples and all of them split up. The game comes to a screeching halt, and all the time and work you put into that game is sadly over. So don't take that as me saying don't date your players. You know, that's how I met my girlfriend. She was a player in one of my games, and you know, now we hooked up. It's cool. But I definitely think that, you know, don't be afraid to say no. Is what I'm trying to say. You know, if there are certain players that want to jump in your game, but you know they probably wouldn't fit with your group, you know, just tell them, you know, this probably wouldn't be the most ideal game for you. But I have another game I'm going to be starting up this next week, or, you know, sometime later in the month. And definitely just seeing what kind of experience they have. Like, with my group, they've all been gaming for 5 years straight. Whenever we have brand new players, I expected them all to say no. Like, oh, you know, we're all trained, we're all level 15, you know, we know our party chemistry just fine. We don't want this new guy in. I know that didn't happen at all. They were very welcoming of new players. And I think that's kind of a mentality that players will eventually adopt as they continue playing a game for so long, that they want others to experience the joy that they have having played this game for so long. So definitely making sure that your players understand that if you bring in someone new, you know, they're definitely going to want to help them out, you know, help them build their character, help them role play. That's one more big issue I've had with new players, is that they're afraid to role play. And I understand completely. When I first started playing D&D 8 years ago, I was afraid. I didn't know what to do. I mean, I had a piece of paper in front of me. I had some dice. Everyone knew exactly what they were doing. But as a DM, you know, you kind of have to reach out to that new player, you know, and just kind of coax them, and I wouldn't say break their shell, but yeah, you break their shell. Help them, you know, experience role playing. Help them see, you know, how to play a game, how to really work well with others. And I've always sent new players links to some of you know, some D&D podcasts or live D&D games. There's one DM in particular. His name's Chris Perkins. He works for Wizards. He's done some amazing games. One group in particular is called Acquisitions Incorporated. Yep. Funny game, funny group with Will Wheaton. I always send players that game to watch, to see kind of how D&D can be. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, he did a game with a couple of people in Britain. You know, I guess they were authors or something along those lines. And the party was so reserved and a lot more quiet than, you know, Acquisitions Incorporated. So I always let them know that there's definitely going to be a broad spectrum of players out there, anywhere from being really quiet and you know, reserved, to just being completely over the top. And just making sure that new player fits in your group is key. So that's my thoughts on, you know, that's my thoughts on really doing the party build. It's really important early on to do that.
When I've done the same thing, I mean, I used to interview people before. You know, looking for new players, I go to a bar, go to a pizza place, talk to them, find out, because I want to know about the person, I want to know how they play, and sometimes I'll recruit people by watching them in other games. And I'm like, are you going to be a pain in the butt? Are you going to be fun to game with? Because I got a lot of work, I do a lot of things, I have very little time to plan my games, and when I do invite someone to my game, if they make me regret wanting to game, I'm going to take them out. That's the last thing I need. And so I really need people that just mesh and gel and have fun. I don't have a lot of requirements. We've got quiet gamers. I got gamer. I've had gamers that are loud and boisterous, that are really active, or just kind of active. But I'm fine with a range, as long as everybody gets along and it's the same vibe. It's really all that matters.
Good. Let's talk now about a little bit about resources.
Definitely, yeah.
Yes.
So, as I stated earlier, I love these technology. I mean, I know back in the day, D&D was purely about imagination, rolling dice, all that jazz. But I've been spoiled. I have just been spoiled rotten. I won't run a game now without some sort of music or ambience or whatnot. If I'm playing a Star Wars RPG, I'm going to take the soundtrack and kind of play it in the background. Quiet, you don't want it to be distracting, like Drew said, sometimes it could be. If I'm playing, my D&D game, I'll, take some music from Lord of the Rings, Dragon Age, you name it. Kind of have some battle music playing in the background. I think that little bit of ambience, that little push really helps bring your game to life. So that is probably one of the most invaluable resources that I've ever used. It's just something small like music, something small like ambience, and it really
apps,
there's
a lot of apps.
Yeah, there's
DMDJ is really
Sirenscape, the DMDJ, just ripping soundtracks of your favorite movie or whatnot. But I'm a little careful too about choosing iconic music from Lord of the Rings. It'll sometimes, I don't know why, just if I'm playing the Lord of the Rings theme, while we're doing a battle, it sometimes throws the players off. So I always make it a point to look for these obscure soundtracks that they've never heard before, and it just seems to meld and fit the mood a lot better. I don't know why that is.
It doesn't have to be convoluted. It could be something very tame or easy. Some sessions, like I said, I've gone all out with a 7 surround sound speaker system. I've got Sirenscape playing. I got DMGJ on my iPad. I got multiple layers of music going. And I'll go all the way down to just on my phone with a Bluetooth speaker connected to it. And one battle they were fighting this troll. It was a 4th edition module, and this badass troll they were fighting. So every time it was his turn, I just cued my phone, and it was Megadeth Symphony of Destruction, but it only played during his turn. And at the end of his turn, I turned it off. Okay, you guys go back to Symphony again. And they're kind of disturbed by that for a while. I was like, that's not right. So it can get as detailed or as lax as you want. And sometimes I don't do it. I just don't have time to plan for it. Sometimes I really plan. Like I'll put a Microsoft Word document together. Like this is the chapters I'm going through for my module this week. And when this happens, this battle, I want this song to play. And so through my laptop, I create a link to that song. And I hyperlink it right there in the Word document. And so as I'm going down step by chapter in my nightly game, like time for that song, I just click. I don't have to go looking for it. It's right there. I don't have enough time to prep like that very often. But when I do, and they go, my God, that was just so laid out, so awesome. It's like, this ain't happening there very often, guys. Or I've even helped when we run D&D expeditions on Tuesday nights. I run that, and I'm normally having to run 10 people every Tuesday. And I just can't focus on any of the other goodies I would like to do. So about the other DMs, Nick and Jerry and Cody and Andrew comes from Pismo to play. They all help me DM. And one time, we call him Pismo for short, but Andrew was running a session of it, and I actually connected with the sound system, and I was on cue for everything he did. I had 2 different sound systems going. I was tapping, so here's background music, here's subtle music, here's mystery, here's action. We just got into combat. Conan the Destroyer, play. And so with a DM with an assistant, it's a whole new level of gaming you can do. And if you get really good at DMing and someone wants to learn, take them in as an apprentice, use them. And you'd be amazed how much more you can do and how much more fun it can be had.
That's a good resource.
With the way Desmond was saying, to go out into the world and listening to Chris Perkins do either live YouTube games or even his podcast, great resources, great inspiration, because you can not only see how players are interacting and what actually makes a nice cohesive game, but also you can actually listen to an actual experienced DM and how they're running the game, how they're responding to their players, how they're actually going to be using some materials, because sometimes if it's YouTube, you can watch it and you can see it. If not, even it's on the podcast, you can still listen, and they might throw out a name of what they're using. In addition to listening to Chris Perkins, if you guys can go on iTunes, Gamers Haven podcast is a fantastic group that I've been listening to for years. They have live actual play recordings of not only Dungeons & Dragons, but Mutants and Masterminds, Deadlands, a bunch of games. A fantastic a podcast called The Wizard's College, in which every single character is only a magic user. And they all go literally, it's like Harry Potter, but it's fun. And it's really awesome. Not that Harry Potter isn't fun, but it's a really, really fun game. And most of the aspect of the actual campaign is them starting off as freshmen in this wizard college and going up to their senior year. And as they're progressing through the school years, they're going off on different adventures. And their professors are saying, "Well, I need the feather of a phoenix." God, let's go get a phoenix. Don't die. All right, you'll get an F. Okay. And so Gamers Haven Podcast is a great resource. There's another one called New Hope, where everybody is a roguish type character. And it's really fun to listen to these guys because they're primarily the same groups. He runs another one that's called the Dragon Game, where everybody is actually a dragon wormling, and they're just getting out of the hatchery, and they need to go and make their way in the world. So listening to this podcast, it's very fun. It's good inspiration. It's listening to an actual DM, and I think it's kind of a moot point to point out, but your DM's guide will be your best resource, hands down. If you need something answered, you have your DM's guide. If you need inspiration for a new adventure, you have your DM's guide. If someone is asking about this armor class penalty, you have your DM's guide. That should be your go-to resource for anything and everything. I mean, if you want to play D&D for the rest of your life, really the only things you need is a DM's guide, a player's handbook, and a monster manual. Those 3 books, and you can run it, everything and anything, for days and days and days. And if you can find it or even afford it, a DM screen is gorgeous and just awesome. Because they're pretty, and I mean, if you play 3.5 like I do, and you're a big advocate of it, the backsides of them have little notes, quick notes. So I mean, if someone is trying to get up from the floor, sometimes they'll have notes to tell you, yeah, he's getting up, awesome. Your monster gets an attack of opportunity. If they're trying to cast a spell in the middle of combat, well, they need to make a concentration check. If they actually successfully cast it, they still get an attack of opportunity on them. And little notes like this, and for the 5th edition now, they've started doing the initiative trackers, which is really good, because no longer are you like writing it on a paper and keeping it with you, but the players are also going to need to know what's coming up, who's going to be there. Paizo put out a really nice initiative tracker that's magnetized, and you can write players' names on it, and you can probably stick that up on a wall, or keep it out in front for everybody to see. Just like
there's some on the flash drive we're going to give you too. There's some tents, and actually when we saw those, I'm going to update my hand ones.
Well, see, and for my initiative tents, besides telling everybody else who it is, on my side, I write down key information. Their perception stats, their intelligence scores, all the stats that I need, their armor class, hit points, whatever.
And that's on those.
So I have just a quick glance. Yeah, and a flash drive we have as a
Yeah.
blueprint of those you can print out and cut and use.
It speeds up. That's kind of a key when you're doing games too, is that combats can really bog down. People just are like, is this ever going to end? Because it's taking so long to, who's next? That kind of thing. If they already have it there, they already know they're ready to go. It's like they're on deck. They know what to do. It speeds up things tremendously. I never used to use those. I always used to write them down. And then
Yeah, this is all new for me as in the last 4 months. Never used
They
them.
just started promoting those. And
yeah.
They never
Brilliant.
got them for some reason.
And so I mean, D&D doesn't have to be.
Tracker.
Yeah,
I
combat
still
tracker.
use it.
Yeah.
It's very
That's
well used,
essentially
as you can tell.
Yeah.
But dry erase just on a laminated thing and rounds, and you can write conditions if somebody got stunned and they're going to be stunned for so many rounds. You can write it, and you know when it's going to end, and keep track of that. Those are kind of important things, because sometimes you'll just forget, or they'll forget they're actually still stunned or not, that kind of thing. So just write the initiative scores around it, and then notes, and it's kind of a handling, but they got this cool stuff now too. So.
And when it comes to a DM screen, for D&D, that's where they came from. So they're everywhere. It's easy to find one. But if you're playing a game that doesn't have a screen, you're playing one of the plethora of role-playing games that are futuristic, sci-fi, vampire-related, whatever. Sometimes they don't have screens.
Make your own.
Make your own.
Yeah.
Get an old version of a screen, of an outdated D&D screen that no one wants anymore, even, and then take paper clips, print out your notes, and then put them inside. Now you've got your own homemade screen.
It's a cardboard box and
And
that's
you can find online. There's a company that sells a GM screen that's just made with clear pockets.
Yeah.
But it's like $20 or $30, and I think for $5 you can buy an old used screen and use paper clips. For me, that would work. It'd be nice. I like the idea of the customizable, just put the sheets in and out, but $20, $30.
And on that flash drive, actually, there's some condition charts. They're for 5th edition. The condition charts this guy did that you can cut to put in those ones that have pockets. They're on that little flash drive too. But
I mean, D&D doesn't have to be some kind of a pit hole for your wallet.
No.
You don't have to dump hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of dollars into a game, or I mean,
right.
right. I mean, if you want to make a castle,
He's got every miniature.
exactly.
Ever.
If you want to make a castle for your game, by all means, you can have a single sheet of graph paper and draw it out with a pencil, and that can be pennies on the dollar. Or you can even get a mat, because they have mats here available at the shop. You can get them online.
And there's so many different types of mats.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, they have ones that are laminated. You can get the ones that are the roll-up mats, which simply have
The vinyl mats.
vinyl mats. You can draw them with a marker, and then they just spray them wet and wipe them clean. And you can write it. You can draw it all out, and that can be your castle.
Those are nice.
The flip mats
These are good for quick
great.
encounters. Like
Yep.
you have to draw out a room, or they went someplace you didn't expect them to. You can draw it out real quick on here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But now, if you want to, forego your next paycheck and invest
college
in
education.
or college education, you can totally get into some Dwarven Forge. Brian has oodles and oodles of Dwarven Forge.
Yeah.
Or there's even cheaper stuff that you can get into. I mean, I even went to a game.
Fiery Dragon,
Yeah.
paper craft.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Print out, fold it.
Exactly.
I think that stuff looks cheap and cheesy until I saw someone do it. And he made it look really good. And he can build almost anything.
I played a game with one time. The guy made his castle out of Legos.
Yeah.
And we went through, and why not? It was actually kind of fun. Lincoln Logs he also used one time. It's like, you find a cabin. I'm like, when I was 6? But it was fun. It was great. And it just worked. So you don't have to invest, all your worldly possessions into it. But if you want to go that extra mile, no one's stopping you. There's many, many websites out there that you can go to. I mean, via here at Paladin, or there's another resource called miniaturemarket.com. They have plenty of miniatures, and now they're coming out with the Reaper Bone miniatures, which are made from a nice plastic
You guys
that
don't
are
have any
much
of that, do you?
cheaper.
Reaper Bones, which is a
have
nice white, pliable, pre-primered plastic from Reaper Minis. You can still primer over, though it's a hydrophobic, so you got to use a not very water-based type of paint. But it is amazing, and the range is
So many,
just phenomenal. And since they're plastic,
and they're much cheaper.
you can throw them around. Now, it's also sealed, so I'm not scratching this awesome paint job, and what you want to do. But plastic minis over metal minis, if you're going to be a GM and you're going to get into minis, I'll tell you right now, I've had over 1,000 metal minis at one time. And I've had to be a portable DM and going place to place and keeping minis in nice foam cases and then having to untake them out and put them away. Now I've got buckets of minis. I just throw them in there and shred them and walk away. Plastic minis is the way to go. If you like to paint, paint your own. If you don't, buy the pre-painted ones, so you usually have a reasonable price. And back in the 80s, I was buying a mini that was one mini that I had to glue together, and then I had to paint them. Mini still cost $4. Nowadays, you can buy $4 for a pre-painted plastic mini. You can throw against the wall, pick up, and he's not even bent. So, it's amazing how far they've progressed, and prices really hasn't gone up when you consider. Because I've been buying, little dragons, back in the day, that was a $50 dragon.
Yeah.
Now for $50, you can get a badass dragon that looks what it is you're really fighting, instead of some bent piece of lead.
That's the key, is that when you choose to become a GM or dungeon master, you kind of take on a whole nother responsibility, because you kind of become the guy that has to buy everything. You're kind of that guy. You're providing the venue a lot of times, or having to find the venue, and investing into books and all the stuff you can get. You can go crazy on it. I mean, there's just tons of stuff. It's really cool. But that's kind of the commitment you make to do that. Your players can help you with that, because sometimes you can get parties that they all pitch in. and all the players will pitch in because hey, we want some cool maps.
Which is
We
what
want,
we're doing
you
with
know.
the new Kickstarter for
Yeah.
Dwarven Forge.
Yeah.
Kickstarter. I'm tapped out.
More?
Yes, I am tapped out. I can't get on this Kickstarter, so my groups decide. Several of us are all going to chip in, and we're going to get this huge amount of new miniature terrain that's coming out. So, which is amazing.
Yeah, it is.
When preparing for an adventure, Google can always be your friend.
Mm-hmm.
By all means, Google an adventure. There's enough people out there who have made their own homebrewed campaigns and are not caring about copyrights for their own stuff. They just are happy that maybe some of their adventures are just getting out in the world and getting used.
There's a plethora of free.
There's a plethora.
That kind of brings up a point too when you're running a game and starting a game, and I suggest people run a pre-generated, something pre-generated adventure when they first start. Keep in mind that that's probably already out online now because of the internet. Everything's been spoiled in it, so your players can go and search for it. They will go search for it. So you want to change it.
But it's
Want to
nice to have
surprise them.
a skeleton to work from.
Yeah.
Gives
Yeah.
you at least a
Yeah, you
base.
want it to be a skeleton.
Tweak it yourself.
Yeah, that's really important because that does happen. They can't help it. You know, they might be searching for something else. And say, "Oh, that's the one we're in." Oh my gosh, I just saw the boss or something. You know, it's like so you got to change things up. That's just I just thought of that as we were going.
And I usually always encourage DMs at some point to just run their own homebrew. You know,
that's-
I'm sure at one point in most of our youth we've thought of this wonderful fantasy world in our minds that we just kind of just playing around the playground. The game that I'm running now is a product of me playing on the schoolyard, at 5 years old, and now that I'm 21, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm actually gonna breathe more life into this world. So I usually always encourage to do some manner of homeworld, and it's so much fun just building a world from the ground up. I found myself staying up until 3 a.m. In case you can't tell, I have a problem with staying up really late. But staying up till 3 a.m. Just like building cities, writing up NPCs, giving this world life. Just writing the history of it. Conflicts. How did it get to the state of being where it is? These cool bad guys and everything. And it does take a long time, but when you have this fleshed out world, I've had the most fun just literally tossing players in it and say, what do you guys do? And they just have watching them have so much fun in the world you made is so satisfying. And just seeing what they do to either improve it or completely destroy it is...
They can help you rewrite the history.
It's so amazing. I just love it to death. So I always encourage DMs at least once just to do your own little homebrew. It's so much fun.
Okay. So you want to do Q&A?
Q&A? Sure, yeah.
Questions? Do you have any questions?
Brian, you mentioned earlier that one of the things that's important is to figure out what you're bad at and avoid it.
Yes.
Do you have an example of what you're bad at and how you avoid it? Or does anybody?
What? There's a few things. I'm bad at planning.
Yeah.
And I wait till the last minute sometimes. I think all week, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do, this is what I want to do. Oh, the game starts in an hour. I had 4 hours worth of stuff I wanted to do. So I need to get ahead of my planning, because I know I'll never get to it on time. I'm bad at sometimes I forget some levels of the role-playing that I wanted to do, or I tend to do. My organizational skills, I'm great in the long term, planning out things en masse, but I'm horrible on the detail of organizing, so I'm a horribly unorganized DM.